Hi everybody, it's Miss Boylan. I wanted to take a moment here real quick. I've been grading some, programs, and there are some observations that I've noticed at the beginning that I think that if we just attack them right away, we should, it should make programming smoother. This is not to say that once we kind of address these issues that we'll never have bugs again. Please note, bugs in Java, they go hand in hand. You're always going to have little errors. Don't get upset. Don't feel like you're a bad programmer. Even the most experienced programmer is going to have bugs and errors in their program. Okay, so what's most important is understanding the things that generally generate, programming errors. So we're gonna talk about a couple of those things here. Sorry if I talk fast. I've got a lot of stuff I need to go through. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the program header information. Okay, so I've got three things highlighted here. When you create a new class, the program header is automatically filled in. It's already put in. All this stuff would be in there. I created a class called program header, and so it automatically filled in a program header for me into that class. These three things, I'm highlighting them because I require that they get changed in every assignment. I require that you add a new description of your own. I require that you put your author name, your name, and I require that you put the date that you list it there. Okay, so every rubric has points for these things. So if you don't make changes to these, every program, you're missing points. You could have this great program and just miss a couple of points because you didn't change these. Now I will say, the program is going to run regardless whether you change it or not. Okay, so you might be asking yourself, well then why change it? That's a good question. It's a valid question. Thing is I like for you to assume you're a professional programmer. Okay, and if you're a professional programmer and you're working in a company with other programmers, you submit something that doesn't have a program header, a well thought out program header and comments, somebody's going to be like, what the heck does this program do, right? This is what this information, who created this? When was it created? Is this the most recent version? So that's what this is for, okay? This is for the fact that you're probably going to give it to somebody else, or even you may make it and not see it for a year, right? Somebody says, hey, this code stopped working. Can you go check what's going on? And you can go look at it and be like, what was this for again, right? So this stuff is there to jog your memory, to jog somebody else's memory, to let them know what the program is about, who created it, and when this most recent version was created. Okay, so basically those points are included because I want you to practice, have best programming practices. Practice like you're a professional. Okay, and this is what professionals would do. They would write a description of class program here with an actual description. Every program activity that we have, I always give you a description of what it is. All you have to do is sum it up in your own words. One sentence, two sentences, tops. You don't need a paragraph. If we're working on operators, just say this program demonstrates how to use operators. That's it. Make sure that you include your name and make sure you include the date you created. You get those points automatically. Okay, moving on. Removing shell code, the skeleton code. Okay, so just like having that program header, the minute you create a class, you're also going to get all this skeleton code included in your program. It's all written correctly, and you can compile it, and it's going to compile okay. It's not going to do anything. It won't, you can't run it. There is no main method, so we just delete it. It's just meant to guide you if you needed help, but we don't need it, so we just delete it. So we take everything from that comment at the very top, right below the opening curly bracket of the class, so where it's got the comments that say instance variable, we take and we delete everything all the way down to this closing curly bracket of the sample method. Okay, so what should it look like when you're done deleting everything? It should look like that. Okay, nothing should be between the opening and closing curly brackets of the class. Not yet. Okay, but we're going to move on and we're going to do that now. Okay, the main method. This is the all-important method. Okay, so the main method goes sandwiched between the curly brackets of the class. And you have to understand we have the main method has a couple of things I need to point out. First, it has this header. So the header is public, static, void, main, and then a set of parentheses. And within parentheses, we've got string and these square brackets, space, args. Okay? That is the header of the main. The main header has to look just like that. You can't remove anything. You can't change anything to uppercase. It has to be just like that. Okay? String has to be uppercase. Main has to be lowercase. If you make any changes to that, your program will compile, but it won't run. And the reason it won't run is because the program requires a main method to run. And if the main method isn't programmed correctly, it won't run. It won't even recognize that there's a main method in there to run. So like if a student were to submit a perfectly good program, but the only difference is they capitalized main, M in main, a perfectly good program would not run. It wouldn't even say that there was a main to run, okay? All I'd have to do is go in there, change the main from a capital M to a lowercase m, compile, run again, voila, I could run it then, okay? So you've got the program header that needs to be exactly as is, and then you've got an opening and closing curly bracket. Once you type these three things in within, the opening and closing curly brackets of the class, this bit of text, the whole area, will be in yellow. Okay, so before it'll probably be green as you're typing, but once you put that closing curly bracket, as long as all three pieces are there, that whole area will turn yellow, the text. So all methods in BlueJ are listed in yellow. Okay. So let's move on. Print methods. So it's important to understand we have a couple of different types of print methods. And here I've got 5 print statements. Okay, the first 2 use the print method, just the print method. So print method, and the bottom 3 use the print line method. So it's important to notice that that's print, and then that's an L, a lowercase l. So if you remember print line, you'll know, okay? It's an L. I know it looks like sometimes people misinterpret it for a 1 or an uppercase I, which is easy to do, but just remember print line, and you'll always remember that it's an L, okay? Difference between print and print line is print is once the text has been printed to the screen, it's not going to move the cursor to the next line. So if you had a statement that used the print method, it would print the text to the line, and if you had another print statement, that text would also be printed on the same line, okay? The print line method, the print ln method, it's going to print any text that is listed, it's going to print that, and then it's going to take the cursor and it's going to move it to the line below. So any subsequent print statement would then be printed on the line below the previous one, okay? So just take a look here, look at these 5 statements and see if you don't understand why the output is what it is. So I will tell you one thing, this middle statement, the third one, the system.out.println, and then there's nothing within the parentheses, that just is moving the cursor from the top line down to the second line. Okay, I have to do that. I have to move the cursor or else the text would continue on, okay, on that first line. A couple things to note real quick. System is a class that is built into Java. You don't have to import it. You don't have to do anything. It's automatically built in. You can just refer to it, okay? So out, the class has a couple of different methods. It has out and in. Those are some of your choices. And for out, right, output, you have certain methods that are attached to it. In this case, we have the print method, we have the print line method, we also have a printf method that we'll learn about later, okay? So then let's move on. Probably the most important, variables and spelling and capitalization, okay? So let's look at this here. So I've got this program, and in the program I have declared and initialized, in one statement I declared and initialized three variables. I've got the top variable, it's an int variable, it's called example1, and it's been initialized to the value of 65. I've got the second variable is an int variable, it's example2, and it's been initialized to 95. Finally, I've got the int variable example3. Notice that example is spelled unlike the other two examples, right? It's missing its second E, and it's been initialized to 82. Okay, so I will tell you, probably the thing that generates most errors is that variables and their references, they don't match. You know, one thing will be spelled one way, the other thing will be spelled a different way, and they can't talk to each other, they can't find each other. Sometimes, you know, you'll make a method, call it one thing, type it, you know, capitalize it one way, and then you'll refer to it later. You'll try to call that method, but you call it with the wrong capitalization. They're not going to talk to each other. So in Java, it's very specific, right? The spelling and the capitalization are very specific, so you have to be really very careful. Okay, so we have those. The top three are variable declarations and initializations all in one. I could have just declared the variable and not given them a value. So that's one way you can do it. You can you know, just declare a variable and give it a value later, or you can do like I did in this instance where I declared and initialized at the same time. Okay, so then I've got three print statements here. I've got text, there's green, right, within the quotations. That stuff is going to be printed exactly as it's written. And then I've got this thing in black, right? So I've got example1 on the first print line. It says in black, it says example1. That is a reference. That is referring to a variable. It's looking for a variable of the same name. It's looking for the value of a variable with the same name. If a variable does not exist with the same exact name, we're going to get an error. Okay? So I've got these three statements, and what we're going to find is once I compile, we have some errors because sometimes our references to our variable and our variable, they're not exactly the same. So let's see what that would look like. So imagine I compiled it. My first print statement is fine because the reference example1 is exactly the same as the declaration of the variable example1. I run into a problem in the second print line because example2 has a capitalized E. That reference has a capitalized E, but the actual variable itself has a lowercase e, so it's not talking to each other, right? So in order to do that, in order to fix this, I need to change my reference to a lowercase e, example2. So let's say I did that. Let's say I fixed that reference to a lowercase e for example2 and I ran it again. Okay, this time it clears that error, but now it gives me this other error in the third print statement. Okay, so in the third print statement, you notice I spelt, my reference is spelling example correctly, but in my my declaration of that variable, I spelt it incorrectly, okay? So since the two don't match, it's saying, hey, oh, by the way, this is what it's saying down at the bottom, cannot find a symbol. It did it in the last one too, okay? It says cannot find symbol variable example2. It means I looked at your declaration of variables and it's not there, okay? Same with this one. It's saying, hey, you're using a reference to a variable that's not listed. So what I did is I fixed the declaration, the variable in the declaration. I added the E in the variable declaration so that the spelling is okay. And then guess what happens? Then I get, it's fine, class compiled, no syntax errors, and I can run it, okay? So as I said, this is probably the biggest problem you're ever gonna face. So whenever you have an error and you get that little statement that says, you know, variable cannot find symbol or something is not identified, be sure to check your references. Be sure to check your variables and make sure that they align. Make sure that they're spelled exactly the same. Make sure that they're capitalized exactly the same. Okay? So with that, I'm going to finish this. Sorry it was longer, but it covers a lot of stuff. Okay? So let's get to programming and have a great week.